Hello, everyone. We're here with Stephanie and Joe on the go, and we're going to be talking about what is this podcast. We're also going to give a little bit of intro background on who we are, and we're also going to discover why there's some noise where Joe is.
Absolutely.
Back to school. So, Joe, what's this all about?
Yeah. So, Steph, we talk almost every morning, and we talk about, what educators are going through, maybe some innovative ideas of what we would love to see in education. And we thought, you know what, we're always talking on the go in the morning. Why not record it and share it with the world? And so, like, I'm out here on my morning exercise, and you're getting started with your day, and we're like, hey, let's go ahead and hit that record button and just share what we each have to say about certain topics.
Yeah, and I think educators are busy, right? We're always like, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. And so what Joe and I were like, let's just do it within our normal routine. And what I appreciate and love about Joe is that he doesn't just stop his routine. He's like, I am not going to stop this. I'm going to walk. And I'm like, I love that because I think it shows the educators that you can still learn, you can still inspire other educators through your daily routines.
No, 100%. And to be completely honest with everybody, like Steph and I have known each other for a while, but we met at the Google Champions event in person for the first time in October of 23. And I was like, hey, I would love to keep our conversations going, but our time is so busy and our time zones are so different. What do we do? And we found Marco Polo, right, to be able to chat. And so that allowed us to communicate with each other, leave each other messages, and respond to each other in our own time, which I think this podcast, kind of like what you were saying, Steph, is the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. We get to talk to one another. We get to share our opinions and our thoughts while we are doing what we're already doing. And I think that was a great point that you made of sometimes we put, oh, we can't add this because it's going to take away time. But can you add it during the same time you'd be doing other things? So I think this really helps showcase how conversations can happen in real time during the day, not in a separate space.
Yeah, for sure. And so we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves. So I'm Stephanie. I am a teaching and learning coordinator at CAMI. I also run the Gold EDU group and just love educators, love connecting with educators as well, and just so excited to, have those deep conversations about education and how we can help teachers solve the different problems.
Yeah, and I'm Joe Marquez. So I was an eighth grade science teacher for 10 years in Clovis Unified School District. And then I moved into the educational technology coach space in that same district. And to be honest, Steph, I've been out of, I don't want to say I've been out of the game, but I've been out of the classroom for about 6 years because I was an education strategist with CDW for about 2.5 years. And then I became director of AI for Q here in California for about 4 years. And so I'm extremely happy to be back into an instructional technology coach role because I've seen there's been so much change in the last 6 years, right? And just to walk in to a new ecosystem that I've been yearning for is just an amazing gift, but also there's a lot of pressure on educators now with technology in the classroom.
Yeah, and I think too, educators feel so overwhelmed. And I mean, I made the move too from an instructional coach, intervention specialist, and now, working for a company. And there are just little things that I've learned that I'm like, oh my gosh, if I went back into the classroom, I would do this differently, right? I would view education a little bit different than how I do now. I think I would use data more impactful because we have to use data every single day of our life right now in this role. Whereas an educator, sometimes I didn't have that data that I thought I needed, but you really do have formative checks throughout.
No, yeah, and as we were getting ready for this podcast, we were kind of joking about where we were 6 years ago as an education community with technology and where we are today. And Steph, I know you were the same way. Like 6 years ago, 2018, 2019, our goal was to get teachers figuring out ways to use technology more. We're like, oh, what can we do in this world to get teachers to see the power of technology? How can we get them to use more technology? And then the pandemic hit, and all the teachers are starting to use technology. And we were like, well, we didn't mean like that. We didn't mean we wanted you to do something like this to get more tech in the hands of teachers. But here we are, right?
And now we're like, how do we make them use it in impactful ways?
100%, because right now, it used to be the struggle was how can we get devices in our classrooms. Now, which we have devices, how can we get them to use it for engaging lessons, for enrichment, for creativity and creation? Because, like you said, data drives decisions, but sometimes data drives more than that. I see right now a lot of teachers are getting their students to use computers for that initial diagnostic, right? That's their main mission, their main goal for this first month is let's get these laptops out. Let's open up our district platform and let's get these kids tested to get a baseline diagnostic on where they're at. I think that's great, but sometimes that's where the tech ends, is that diagnostic or just the testing. And I think sometimes that could be a sticky situation when we see the computers as a testing device, not as a creation device. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I found a lot of teachers, when we first started using technology, it was more for assessments, right? Those diagnostic tests. I think they were kind of required in Ohio for the OST, which is that Ohio State test at the end of the year. And so that's kind of a lot of reasons that a lot of districts started to purchase devices, I think. And what my teachers I really had to focus on was, okay, how do we use this to really engage our learners, make learning more creativity? And it's still sometimes a struggle. Sometimes I just walk in classrooms and I just see students on the program learning from a computer, and they're not using those higher levels of DOK to really demonstrate and show their learning. And so how do we move past that?
No, I agree. I mean, I was just in a classroom the other day explaining to students that, we're going to be using these computers to respond, but you can respond in person as well. But I said, you can type your response to me. I'll see it. You can even record your response to me. Because I was letting them know not everybody responds perfectly in the same modality. If we're asking students to just give a verbal response, maybe they don't do very well at a verbal response. Maybe they're more they have a better graphic organizing mind. So let them draw out their response. Like, technology allows us to give students the leeway to present what they know in the modality that best fits them, right? But a lot of these diagnostic tools, they are just one way, and every student has to kind of respond in that one singular way. So how can we as educators create new experiences to give every student the opportunity to showcase what they've learned in the modality that best fits them?
Yeah, I love that. And I think some of that comes with professional learning for teachers, right? How we're going to train our teachers in order to move just from, okay, I'm going to use technology as a assessment, or I'm going to use it just to put them on a program or just to watch a video. And we have this professional learning opportunity, but yet I hear so many teachers hate professional learning, or they just feel that overwhelmed by all of the new things that they feel like they need to do. So how can we deal with teachers when we have these, required professional learning days to support their needs, and how do we get in that door?
Oh my goodness, that is the question, isn't it? My buddy Adam and Catherine, my buddies Adam and Catherine, they wrote a book called The Complete EdTech Coach. And it's a really great book. But one of the things they always say is it's great if you can walk around the campus, get into some classrooms, walk into some doors, and just kind of watch people teach. I love that idea. But there's a problem with that. And that's, number one, we don't want to just interrupt a teacher while they're doing their thing, right? Sometimes having somebody just walk in and watch them teach could be a little bit odd if you haven't truly gained their trust yet. But also, we have to be completely honest. The school climate that we live in, most schools require doors to be closed and locked now. Especially in the area I am, a lot of the schools have an open campus plan, meaning there's multiple points of entry on a campus. And so, it's a great It's a great community. And they're great schools, but it requires teachers to have their doors closed and locked. And so it's really difficult for me to just walk in and sit down without interrupting. So how do we create spaces for teachers to have opportunities for teaching, for professional learning, but not taking up more time? Because that's the hugest thing is teachers don't have a lot of time. And that means coaches don't have a lot of time to find moments to present that professional learning. I know you had some success when you were a coach. What are some of your thoughts on how to get buy-in, how to get into classrooms, how to get teachers to want to learn how to use these new strategies and tools, but not feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that I did. And I think as well, I had that same issue. A couple of our buildings, they did have the doors locked. And it felt so awkward for me to unlock the door and then like walk in. Like I just felt so weird about that. It just wasn't normal. And so I kind of had to get over that was one of my strategies was, and then if the teacher asked, what are you doing in here? What do you need? I was always like, I'm just here to see if you need anything. And I just want to see what the students are doing. So that was kind of one of my strategies was I had my key on me. I would go in, unlock the door, walk in, and usually just kind of sit next to a student. The teacher would sometimes ask, what do you need? And I was always like, no, I'm here to support you. What do you need? So that kind of changed the conversation. Another thing that's really difficult because sometimes at district office, they're telling you what you need to do. The science of reading, teachers need this, teachers need that. And sometimes it comes through that teachers are resisting that because they don't have any choice. They're going to solve these different problems in their classroom.
Mm. No, I mean, I hear you completely about requirements. And it almost feels when you're given these requirements that you have no other option. And so when you do what you're being asked, you kind of just don't want to touch the computers anymore. It's like, you know what? I did what I was asked. I'm going to put those away and get back to a different way that I've always done, right? And so we have to be able to have teachers look at these devices as opportunities, not as mandated options. And one of the things that I do, because there's so many ed tech tools out there, you're right, it can absolutely be overwhelming, right? It's like when you walk into a Baskin Robbins and they have 31 flavors, you're like, I don't know which one to pick. And then you finally pick one, and you're like, I regret it. I wish I picked the other one. It's that the conundrum of choice. So what I love to do is filter. If I have a filter and I can filter out the tools that aren't going to work for me and bring to the top the tools that will, it helps me. So, I've told you this before. The filter that I use is I call inspect, redirect, make correct. And that allows that what that means is a tool has to allow me to inspect student work, inspect student knowledge in real time. Not after they've hit submit, not after they've left the class and I can look at a spreadsheet of data. I need to know in real time, are my students getting it? And if they're not, redirect, give them a reteach right away. Give them a different analogy to help them understand it. Find a different way to connect the information to them so that they can make the correction in their brain. And then give them time to make corrections on the digital platform where they put the wrong answer. Now they can go in and amend it for the correct answer. So inspect, redirect, make correct. That's what I look for in all of my tools. And I do have to say, and I'm not just saying this because you work for Cami, the class view that Cami has added to the platform in Google Classroom, it enhances that inspect platform of my filter. And so, Cami has risen in my list of tools specifically because you give that insight directly to the teacher in real time.
And I think too, could you use that class view as a coach, right? Could you have teachers join a learning management system, Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology, Microsoft Teams, whatever you use, and have used class view to really have your teachers reflect? Because there are 4 different types of kind of teachers out there that I like to think through. I'm a big personality person, and you have to think of how are you going to coach? Are you going to for some people, they get very overwhelmed by all the resources. And so with those folks, we really need to consider, am I oversharing too much here? They need step-by-step resources of, okay, here's what you're going to do first, and here's what you're going to do second. They could have choice, but maybe it's 2 options instead of like Stephanie's list of 9 options. And then you have the other people that really do want resources. They want like, a list of resources that they can quickly try in their classroom. They want those resources from you. There's experts out there. These people need you to kind of be the expert, where they want you to come with the research. What is the research-based strategies that I should be using? So they want you to like share the articles, the books with them. And then you have people that want a mentor. And so those people, they already have great ideas in their classroom, and they just need somebody to listen to them and be a thought partner. So I'm really huge into those personalities. So how do you really meet the teachers where they are? When I was a coach, I did not coach like an expert. I would be the oversharer one that's like, here's a bunch of resources. And I didn't reach those teachers like I wanted to, that were those like, they needed the articles, they needed the books, they needed the background behind why I was telling them to use different strategies. And so I think if you can think about the different people in your group, how do you coach? What are your strengths? How do you like to be served by another person if you're trying to, have a coach? And how can you use that to grow their professional learning as well?
No, I love that mindset, because I think sometimes when we as presenters are creating a presentation, we're creating a presentation of what we want to provide. And we forget we need to be thinking about the audience and what they want us to provide. And what that means is we can't be kind of going to the medium, meaning, well, we're going to give a little bit too much that might overwhelm the newbies, but it's not as much that the higher experts are going to be happy with. So like, let's just be in the middle. And when we try to aim for the middle, when we try to aim for the average, we miss most people. And so I had to change my strategy up, where I'm like, okay, these are the 3 things I want my new adopters to know. And I go over that at the very beginning. These are the 3 things we're going to cover. And then the last 15 minutes, we're going to cover this more advanced thing. Hopefully that the people who know those first 3 things, at least they leave with one more strategy, one more tool they can add to their toolbox. Because myself, as somebody that attends many sessions, my goal is to always leave with just one new thing. I don't expect to learn tons. I expect to learn at least one new thing. And so I try to do that when I present, to kind of meet everybody where they are instead of trying to present to one group. And that's usually my hope. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we present just like we like to learn, right? Like I'm that oversharer because I'm like, I want you to give me all the resources if I'm working on a topic or working something on my classroom. But again, that's not everybody. And so I need to take a step back and maybe start with, what is the research? What is the research behind feedback? What does the research say about group work? How do I use that first to really get the audience hooked? And then how can I also maybe add in time for my teachers to collaborate, not only with me, but other peers in the group as well. So if I have a group of math teachers, maybe they're talking to each other, I leave time for them to chat, reflect, share what they're doing in their classroom. And so it's not just me that has to be that expert learner in that class.
I love that. And giving that time for conversation and reflection not only is important when you're providing a professional development or joining a professional development, but it's also a key component of what we should be adding to our classwork. I think one of the things that we forget is to allow time for the learning to take hold by conversing with fellow students and say, hey, what did you learn today? What was your number one takeaway? Oh, that was yours? Here's mine. Having those reflective practices, we as educators try and plan for that, but we usually plan for the reflection to happen maybe at the end of the class period or the end of the day. But as we all know, everything just takes a little bit longer than we think. And so we end up pushing that reflective piece out. Same thing when we present. we may say we're going to give 15 minutes for Q&A, and then we just go too far and there's no more time. So having intent to end at a specific time, no matter where you're at, so you can add in those reflective practices for students and learners to kind of think about what they were just taught, I think is incredibly important. Again, not only as the classroom teacher, but also as a productive presenter.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because something that's really uncomfortable for me as a presenter is that wait time. So I'll be like, does anyone have questions? Okay, let's keep going, because I don't
Yeah.
wait time, right? And so how do you have suggestions that teachers or educators or admin can do during their professional learning, even for students, right? I was the worst teacher with wait time. And so earlier you were talking about how you allowed the students to respond by technology or by talking out loud. So I love that strategy. But what else can we do? Because again, we know wait time is good, but yet we're so bad at it.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, the thing is, I mean, if you think about it, just like when we're kids in the classroom, when a teacher asks, does anybody have any questions? You don't want to be the first person to raise your hand, right? You're looking around to see if anybody else does. And when nobody raises their hand, the teacher or the presenter assumes everybody's got it and they move on. And that's not necessarily the case. And so being able to provide a different modality to ask those questions is very important. So I love, well, if you're using Zoom, you can definitely use the chat, right? But I love to use Padlet. And I have two categories that I tell people about at the very beginning. There's the parking lot, right? Where they can ask questions, but it's not something that needs to be answered now. It can be answered at the end of the session. So it's the parking lot. Let's park it. Let's park the question. We'll answer it at the end. But then we have the emergency break, right? The emergency break is where you put a question in that, like, wait, you just said something, I missed it. Can you say that again? And so as a presenter, I have that Padlet up and I'm watching. Is there any emergency break questions? And what are my parking lot questions that maybe I could answer in the flow of my session, but definitely top of mind when I have that 15-minute break at the end to answer, to ensure that everybody's getting out of the session what I want them to do. I think that's very important because, like you said, people sometimes are not willing to raise their hand or answer, the call to, are there any questions? But they're more willing to write on a platform like Padlet for that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we need to give people time to process. Like your extroverts, they process really quickly. They're going to want to chat it out. But those people that are more introverted, they need the time. So even if you are giving that learning, you come back to that student, that teacher, whoever you're working with, and you just kind of maybe ask them as well, like, okay, it's been, a few days. Have you tried it? Has it worked? What roadblocks, what hiccups have you run into? What successes have you found? And so for me as well, when it comes to wait time, I have to set a timer. I have to set like a 5-minute timer, because if I don't, I'm always like, okay, we're done. Like, we're done. This is awkward. Nobody's talking, but you have to space for people to process. And so again, I just like to set that timer. Usually I'll turn my camera off if it's a virtual training, and if it's in person, I try to walk around. But again, it can be really awkward. And so I think setting a timer might be a helpful resource too.
No, that's really great. There's a neat little extension called Slides Timer that you can add as a Chrome extension. But whenever you put in the time on a slide, when you're presenting it, it automatically starts counting up or counting down, depending on how you write the time. And that really helps not only me as the presenter to keep track of, okay, I'm giving you 5 minutes. No, I'm literally giving you 5 minutes. You can see the countdown happening. But it also helps your audience to be able to go, oh, 2 minutes left. I better get going, right? So I think you're absolutely right. When you say, okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, you can't just have a blank screen. You have to have kind of that visual of that countdown to help people kind of guide their process during that kind of break time that you have. And so I think you're absolutely right. Giving time to process, even though as a presenter, it can be very awkward because we feel like, oh no, this school brought me in. I have to give them every second of me. That's not necessarily the case, right? I'm giving them information, give them time to process, and that is okay. And sometimes that's hard for a presenter to internalized. It's like, oh no, I got to be on for 60 minutes if that's how much time I have. Well, we need to give time for that processing to happen.
Yeah, and I think too, graphic organizers can really help as well. So there's just different graphic organizers or 3 boxes, and I'll just type like, okay, what is something that is your favorite moment from today? What is something that you're excited to try on Monday? What questions do you still have? And so again, giving people just those questions to help them. And sometimes I try to be the first one to respond because I already know that's coming up in my session. And so I'm like, okay, what can I say to kind of get the conversation going, right? Like, what can I kind of start so they can see an example as well has helped.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I love that you brought that up because, and I've shared this with you, I have a graphic organizer that I call past, present, and future, and it can be used across content courses, but I love it for when I'm doing PD because I'll say, okay, I'm going to push this slide deck out to you. I want you to put, this is the topic we're talking about. I want you to think in the past, how did educators approach this topic? In the present, you as a teacher, how are you approaching this topic? And now after we've given you additional resources and new information, how do you foresee yourself approaching this topic now in the future, right? It gives people the understanding that education is constantly evolving. When we have new products, we have new tools, and we have new information. And it doesn't have to stay stagnant. It is constantly evolving. And the moment after a PD, they have the opportunity to be the one who is pushing the envelope forward because they're no longer stagnating in the present. They're looking forward to the future. And so that graphic organizer I use a lot specifically for that purpose.
Yeah, I love that graphic organizer because again, it gets educators reflecting on where I've been and how I've grown, right? It's not just all about, oh, crap, I'm not doing this. It's like, no, look at how much you've grown since that passed. Now you're here. Okay, what's your next step? You know, they
Yes.
can focus in. So I love that.
Yeah, you know, I think sometimes teachers or learners feel that they have to be experts after one session or after one day of learning, and that's not the case. We have to see that learning is in incremental steps, and you know, after a day, you may not see huge growth, but after a year, because those small incremental steps of learning are taking place, after a year, you should look back and go, wait a minute, I've actually grown quite a bit, right? When we show teachers that we're not growing by leaps and bounds, we're growing by steps, I think that's more manageable. And that's a better approach when you're providing PD or you're on campus as an instructional coach to be able to be like, look, we're going to be working together over time. So don't think after this one session, you have to be the best and greatest at this topic, because you don't have to be. Just know that you've now learned something new, and hopefully you can run with that in your own particular way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and so Joe, what's one word or one phrase, I'm going to give you a phrase that you would take away from today's conversation that you're excited to maybe try or share with another educator?
Yeah, I think what I'm definitely going to do more is provide those auxiliary resources to kind of alleviate some stress on my teachers when I say, you know, like, look, I went through a lot of information and I'm here to help. But if you want to kind of dive in deeper into some of the strategies, here's some articles that I read to get to where I'm at, or here's some extra videos I found on YouTube that'll help you out, or here's a great book to start reading to better understand this, to showcase that this isn't a one and done thing. This is a complete coaching experience. It's an experience where, you know, you are going to be given information and opportunity to grow, but you don't have to do it alone. I think that's one takeaway that I'm going to start utilizing more and more often.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think for me, I'm going to focus on I'm going to stealing your past, present, and future strategy. I love that. Stealing it.
Hey, it's not stealing when we give it away, right? Take it, run with it. I always say, you know, if we have something that works, share, because if it works for one group of teachers, it should work for a lot. So by all means, they're fun to do.
Yes, yes. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to hear from you on what are your thoughts when it comes to that overwhelmed educator. Are you a teacher listening and you're like, oh, I got some strategies to use with my students? Are you an instructional coach that you're like, oh, okay, I need to do this now? So, again, think about, reflect on your next steps as that overwhelmed educator. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else in your district, but reflect on that. Reach out to us. Let us know what takeaways you took from this conversation as well.
Absolutely. We want to hear from you. We want to hear, like Steph said, what you got from this episode, but also what do you want to hear from future episodes? Because every morning, Steph and I are on the go. And I believe every other Friday, we're going to take you on that journey with us. So we want to be talking about what you want to be involved in. So we want to hear from you. And we just love each and every one of you because we always say education is a collaborative sport. And if you're doing it alone, you're doing it wrong. And so we hope that you can join us and join our team of innovative pedagogical educators to keep pushing that envelope so we can always be looking towards the future.
Yeah. So everyone have a great day and reach out if you need anything.
Excellent. Bye, everybody.